Going up. Before we begin, I would just like to share a little bit of my first impression when I received the invitation. I was like, we're talking about sports during a book festival? So that was very interesting. It's amazing to see the diversity of topics during this year's Ciel. It's inspiring and it's interesting to say the least. So to be talking about sports, to be talking about policies of sports and the development of sports in Africa, it really shows how much we've grown, how much we've opened up to different topics and different ideas. And who is more equipped to talk about such topic and to share with us his expertise than Mr. Will. Um, I give me 1 second. I will pronounce it as perfectly as possible. Mbiakop. Thank you very much. Mr. Mbiakop is the executive chairman of the African Sports and Creative Institute, and he's also the man behind the book Africa's Sports Industry, published by UNESCO and UM6P in 2024. So, without further ado, let's get to the questions. Let's get as much as we can from your expertise and experience. So, the first question that I thought of is that with Morocco hosting the World Cup in 2030, and something that we've been preparing for the last couple of months heavily, how do you see this affecting how sports, the sports sector in Africa in general?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure, obviously, to be back in Morocco. I landed yesterday from Vegas, Las Vegas, so it was a long trip. Pardon me for any failure in my language, but it's a real pleasure to be here. So your question is the impact of the World Cup coming back to Morocco and the impact on Morocco and the continent, right? I think when we look at that, we probably want to start with looking at what has been done in Morocco over the past 2 decades, leading up to 2030 and obviously beyond. So I think under the great leadership of His Highness, I think we've seen that sports has been included in the global policy, development policy of the country throughout. So it's starting with the youth. So we see that this investment has been made into the youth, developing talents. It continues with training and development. It continues with infrastructure as well. It continues with investment in multiple parts of the value chain, one of them being gaming and esports. So I think the fact that the World Cup is coming back to Morocco is a great signal, not only for Morocco, but also for the continent. As you recall, in 2010, for the first time ever, the World Cup was coming to Africa, and that was in South Africa. I think the great news now with Morocco is that Morocco has a great chance to truly impact not only the country, but the entire continent, and maybe do a better job than South Africa from a legacy standpoint. So when we talk about legacies, we have to think of what is going to be the impact post-World Cup. In numbers, $5 billion is the number the budget number that has been applied to infrastructure development in Morocco, right? So this is mostly for stadium. But beyond that, what we witness is a great push to use sports as an accelerator for global infrastructure growth and development. So example, airports. You see airports in Casablanca, Marrakesh, Agadir. They're growing, new terminal being built to be able to host those different fans coming up. That's one. Roads, right? Train, we have the high-speed train from Tanger going now to Casablanca, but that's going to be extended to Marrakesh. So in the near future, within maybe 2-3 hours, you are in Marrakesh, downtown Marrakesh, you jump on a train, and 2 hours later, you're in Tanger, basically 15 kilometers away from Europe, Spain, right? So that's another one. Mobility has been actually one of the key criteria for FIFA when they were evaluating and allocating, rewarding Morocco with the World Cup. So they realized that to move from one stadium to another, within a city and between cities, transportation was really, really good. It was one of the best, better than the people in South America, for example. So this first part of my take is really focusing on, and I didn't even mention sports tourism. As you know, tourism Morocco, roughly 8% of Morocco GDP. So 8% of the wealth created in Morocco come from tourism. Obviously, we have great places, great hospitality, gastronomy, and so on and so forth. So tourism is a big deal here in Morocco. Now we use sports to improve that, to boost that. Maybe we move from 8% to 10% of the GDP coming from tourism, and that growth may come from sports tourism. You know, I think there's a stat, an average fan traveling versus a traveler, or a usual traveler. The sports fan will usually spend 20% more money when they go travel around the world for a sporting event. So 20% more money being spent in terms of hotel, food, drinks, entertainment, and so on and so forth. So it's actually a great opportunity for Morocco to leverage the opportunity around the World Cup. And obviously for the rest of the continent, you know, I think we've seen the positioning of Morocco, not for years, many years back, Morocco was traditionally looking up north. You know, they were looking at Europe and under different leadership. Now with the new leadership, I feel like Morocco understand that the South-South relationship is huge. We see more and more collaboration with Latin America, but obviously here on the continent with the people from West Africa, Central, South, Southern Africa, and so on and so forth, right? We have major corporations like OCP, but also in banking, I look at Attijari Wafa, BMCE, which has become Bank of Africa for a reason, right? Yeah. So because they understand that the continent is a 1.4 billion domestic market, and a market that is young, 19 years old average age. And that's represent a major opportunity for the entire nation. So that's, in a nutshell, I hope, is the impact of the World Cup coming to Africa.
I was wondering these past couple of days about doing some kind of a study on all of the countries that hosted the World Cup, what happens to their social economic status when it comes to people, what happens to their infrastructure. Do you have any idea about, for South Africa, for example, what were the effects of the World Cup, of hosting the World Cup on South Africa after it was done? Do you have any idea about that?
Yeah, I mean, we put a case study on that. I think we put 15 pages on the book around South Africa and the 2010 legacy. I think we want to look at it from two different perspectives. First, we want to look at it from a pure financial perspective, and second is the indirect impact, if you like. Okay, so I think directly when you look at South Africa, a lot of infrastructures have been developed, right? Stadium has been developed. What we call the How train. So How train is a speed train between the airport and downtown Johannesburg. So now between downtown Johannesburg and the airport, you roughly have a 20 minutes ride, which is amazing because of traffic in Johannesburg, right? So infrastructure is one of the key legacy, and so on and so forth. But to be honest, beyond, obviously tourism, I have to mention tourism because South Africa, same thing, big time touristic destination. But I think, you know, when we look at the 2010 World Cup in South Africa, surely they didn't hit all the targets, right? But I think if you put yourself back in 2010, and obviously they got the World Cup before 2010, right? They got it in late 90s or something like that. You have to remember what state South Africa was back then. From a political perspective, social perspective, societal perspective. And I think winning that World Cup was a huge impact and a huge booster for unifying people, bringing people together. Remember, you're coming from apartheid. where people are basically against each other. So sports has this unbelievable unifying power, bringing nations of what we call the rainbow nation, black, white, yellow, Indian, and so on and so forth, right? So I think the main impact, the one that I will put as number one, is really how the World Cup in South Africa has brought back the nation together and make sure that everybody talk to each other, everybody's rally behind the same flag, which is South Africa flag. I think that was really, to me, the big thing. Now, obviously, they have some challenges. I think one of the key challenges is the ability to transform the World Cup, the 2010 World Cup, in long-lasting or sustainable growth engine, which hasn't been done entirely, unfortunately.
Yeah, as you mentioned, sports has this thing about when you're watching a football match or baseball, whatever, when you're with someone, you feel like you're one, especially if you're rooting for the same team. Unless you're rooting for the other team, then things might get a little heated. But you play on that. You mentioned some apartheid, for example, in South Africa. So what do you think, besides that, what do you think are some of the things that are holding back the sports sector advancement in Africa, and how can we overcome them?
Yeah, look, there's a number of items that we absolutely need to mention. At the African Sports and Creative Institute, our institute, we did run a survey where we actually asked people, thousands of people in the ecosystem, what do you think the challenges are and how do you think we can change things up, right? So I think amongst others, the number one thing that people mention is lack of data. You know, that's why we called our book Understanding the Game, because if you don't know the numbers, if you don't know what you're up against to, it's going to be very challenging for you to take informed decisions, right? So lack of data is one of the main things that is challenging for them. We talk about finance. Access to financing is an issue. Even here in Morocco, I think we have great entrepreneurs who are trying to do things, but they need money, and they need two things. When you talk about finance, you need to access the money. That's number one. But you need to have the cost of money being affordable. Because if I'm sitting in New York, USA, and I go to the bank and I'm getting a loan, and they charge me, I don't know, 5-7%, but I'm sitting in Casablanca or Tangier, I go to the bank and the rate is 20%, it's going to be really, really tough for me to make money, right? Or it's going to take more time. So access to finance and cost of capital, as we call it, is another one hindering the growth. I think infrastructure, everybody's talk about infrastructure. But on infrastructure, to be honest, I have a different view. I actually feel like we are very well equipped when you talk about big stadium. I think our issue is not there. If I give an example, and pardon me for people watching, but Gabon, for example, is an example where we see that the stadium being built for the AFCON today are not being utilized. They're underutilized, actually. They're actually going busted. So that is an issue. So when we talk about infrastructure, I think it's important to talk infrastructure, but in the long run. We don't necessarily need to have 50,000 people stadium. Maybe it's better to do 20,000, but you always have 20,000 people coming on a regular basis.
So what do you think about Morocco trying to build the biggest stadium in the world?
Well, me personally, you know, I'm a little bit of a bold guy. I like big numbers and big things, so I'm glad they do it. But I think the question is less that, to be honest. It's not really about, oh, you're gonna have 100 and, by the way, it's 115, right? 150,000 stadium based in Ben Slimane. Great location. Why is that? Because you're just off the highway. So the market you're targeting is people from Rabat, people from Casablanca. Not only, you're also targeting the world, because I'm sitting in Madrid, Paris, London. I fly over, land in Casablanca, 1 hour, get to my location, which is the stadium, attend the game, the concert, the so on and so forth. drive back and go home, right? So the location has been well put. Again, so the question is not, was it a good idea or not? It was a great idea. The challenge now becomes, now that you have this unbelievable facility, what is your strategy, the long-term strategy, to maximize the facility? How are we going to make sure that it doesn't become an empty elephant? We needed to set Africa on the world map with a premier stadium, a premier sporting destination. Ben Slimane has it. But now, since you have it, this cannot become just a Moroccan stadium. It has to become an African stadium. It has to become one of the best destinations for sports, but also for entertainment worldwide. Just like people think of the Madison Square Garden, you're familiar, right? So Madison Square Garden in New York, the whole world wants to go there. People in boxing, in basketball, and so on and so forth. If you are an athlete or even a fan, you want to go to New York and Madison Square Garden. So I guess the dream for us, from an African perspective, is to have people from Africa, but also from around the world, to say, hey, my dream is to go to Ben Slimane and watch a football game. My dream is to go to Ben Slimane and watch a concert. My dream is actually to fly from Asia to Africa to attend one of the best events in sports or entertainment. That is the goal.
What I'm worried about is the fact that it will be seen as Morocco and not Africa, because Morocco is co-hosting with Spain and Portugal. And given the closeness of Morocco to Spain and Portugal, and only recently where it started to hold its roots with Africa, I'm wondering if there's an actual marketing policy that makes the World Cup look more African than European. So I'm worried that it will be looked at as more European than African.
Yeah, but you see, Zakaria, I don't think you can worry too much. I don't think you have to worry. I think the great thing about Morocco is the DNA. I think the Moroccan DNA is very unique. The diversity of Morocco, from North Tanger to the Amazigh people outside of Marrakesh, Agadir, and so on and so forth. I think the nation has fully embraced the diversity of its population, the diversity of its culture, the diversity of its art, the diversity of its food. You can eat a very good metfouna in Zagora, and you go up north and you have a great fish tagine in Tanger, right? Yeah. And I think more and more the leadership of the kingdom has fully embraced his African nature. And very proudly, you see in all the communication that they do, they really put forward the fact that they are Africans. And lastly, the population, 35 million people, if you ask them, they say that they are Africans. You know, so I think it was actually a smart move to partner with Spain and Portugal. I think that was really good because it also gives you a kind of legitimacy. It helps you to be more sustainable when you look at the investment, you know. So I think it was actually very smart. But I do not have any concern with regards to our African identity because we can never deny who we are. You know, that's one thing for sure. We can never deny who we are. And I think most of people are actually very proud of being Moroccan and being African.
Yeah, you touch on identity in the book quite heavily, especially in relationship with the Hugo model. So can you explain what is the Hugo model and why is identity and African identity important to the development of the sports sector?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, you know, maybe we start with numbers. We see that there's a major growth on the sports industry worldwide over the past 20 years. It's roughly 5% annual growth, you know, over the past 20 years. Obviously, this is without the COVID hiatus, right? But overall, 20% over the past 20 years, we have 5% growth, and it's going to keep growing, right? So the sports industry is going to keep rising and keep bringing growth to the entire world. Why? Because people love sports, they love to consume it, they love to practice it. Now, where is Africa in all of this? Well, for years, we've just been producer of talents. You know, for years, we've just been giving talents out, you know, in football, basketball, athletics. The great the great Hicham El Guerrouj, if you recall, he was one of the guy who put Morocco on the map, right? So for many, many years, Africa has just been providing pure talent. I think today there's a wave of change that is coming up where people understand that Africa is more than just talent, you know, and we see more and more investment coming in, investment in infrastructure. You know, you just mentioned earlier the Ben Sliman Stadium and so on and so forth. Investment in merchandising. You know, you probably know the concept of Cotton 4, the top 4 cotton producing country in West Africa, Burkina Faso, Mali, Benin, and Côte d'Ivoire. So those guys produce cotton for merchandising. So same thing there, we see people investing in it. So 0.5%, this is the contribution of sports to Africa GDP, but it's poised to rise. So what we're trying to say is that, guys, with who we are, and now I'm coming back to identity, who are we in the game? Who are we in the world game? Well, we are a domestic market of 1.4 billion people. This is huge. On average, people in Africa are 19 years old. So that's number 2. Number 3, by 2050, 1 human being out of 4 is African. So 25% of the world is here. So basically, in this game, you're a big-time player, but you just don't know it. You know, so you're a big-time player because 1 out of 4 human being. Imagine you come from planet whatever. You arrive in on planet Earth. You're gonna talk to the biggest people, right? And that's gonna be Africa. So I think what we want to do when we think of identity is to understand who we are in the game. And again, the title of the book, Understanding the Game. So Hugo is the U for understanding the game. So once we understand the game, understanding our capabilities, understanding our potential for growth and what it takes to grow, we now need to go to the G, which is grow the game. So first you understand the game. Number 2, you grow the game. How do you grow the game? You put more investment in the game. Number 2, you invest in your human capital. You invest in your people, because that's where the added value will come from. So once we understand the game, we grow the game. But once we grow the game, we need to understand that we need to own the game. Because contrary to a lot of sectors, maybe mining, for example, you realize that it's mostly Western investors coming into Africa to own the market. Very few, too few, from my perspective anyway, we do not have enough authentic African champions. You know, we need to truly have a group, a generation of sports leaders coming from Africa, brought, raised, developed in Africa. My personal dream is to have many, many sports unicorns from Africa. You know, I've discovered the other day, I think we were talking with a friend, we have people building unbelievable sports tech ventures here in Morocco. And we do have the same thing all across Africa. But what it takes to own the game is for you to be part of the ownership. You know, in sports, I often say, you know, because I used to be working in basketball, and people tell me, your son, do you want your son to become a great basketball player? I say, yeah, but, you know, I would love for him to have other ambition. If he's into sports, the best position in sports, it's not to be the one receiving the check. It's to be in the position of the one writing the check. So ownership. So that's what I'm rooting for. If you can be the owner, you can own the game, that's the best position ever. So that's the Hugo model. U for understanding the game, G for growing the game, and O for owning the game.
The owning part is the most difficult, I would assume, because of the issue of not having so much capital to invest. And easily accepting offers from other countries. So basically, you're just an employee in your own field, in your own country.
Yeah, but it's fine to be an employee. First of all, not everyone can be an entrepreneur. It's very tough. It's a very lonely journey. Huh? I'm on the journey. It's a very lonely journey. So it's absolutely fine to be an employee. But to your point, if you're an entrepreneur, remember that you own your company. You own 100% of it. So now maybe you can just split 10% and you keep the majority. Why those guys, Facebook and so on and so forth, Uber, why did they make money? It's a valuation game. It's a valuation game. If you look at Africa, I was interested by this stat. Some companies who have such a big name, they actually don't make money in Africa. If you look at the EBITDA, but anyways, if you look at their financials, the financials are not amazing. They're actually wasting money, right? But it's a valuation game, because what the investors are looking like, okay, this guy is here in Morocco, 35 million potential market. Today, you only have 1 million. The potential for growth is huge. They're going to invest in the potential. So for me, yes, you can still own the game as long as it's your company. Yeah. And you can also take shares in others. That's models that I don't see enough. But I think that entrepreneurs or startups and all this stuff, they can also take shares in each other, so that you have more skin in the game. You have genuine interest in the success of others as well.
Yeah, you touched on something interesting earlier, which is the best thing that you could do is invest in the people themselves. Yeah. And I feel like one of the biggest criticisms that we internally face now with all these preparation for the World Cup and all this infrastructure, we see roadblocks everywhere, is the fact that why are we doing these types of investment where we should be focusing on raising the living standards, for example, or a big criticism is that the earthquake that happened and people still living in tents, why not directing some of the funds there? So the biggest question that presents itself is this a good investment, or should you direct your attention first to your own people, working on the infrastructure of hospitals, working on the infrastructure of education, and then have a society that is ready infrastructure-wise and also ready in terms of their mindset? Because why would people care about the World Cup or the rise of the sports sector when where the basic needs are still not met yet? And I feel like this could go to a lot of other countries in Africa.
Yeah, look, it's a great question, actually. I'm so glad you bring that up, and I understand what people say. Maybe they can have a view, we don't meet the basic needs, so there's nothing we can do. But I don't think it's the right way of looking at things. First of all, when you look at sports business and the sports industry, when you're building those stadiums, people are working. So those are jobs, right? So, and the funny thing about those projects in infrastructure, Morocco is one of the few countries where you do not have Chinese, you do not have Turkish companies building those stadiums. They're all Moroccan companies, so that's big time. You're not talking about having people from outside coming and basically building and living. You're talking about authentic Moroccan corporation building infrastructure. And when we talk about infrastructure, we should not only look at stadium, because again, it's not what's happening with the leadership here in Morocco. They're looking at stadium, they're looking at roads, they're looking at airports, they're looking at all of those things, right? And ultimately, you want to look at the big picture, and the big picture is that those developments gonna benefit the entire community in a very equal footing way, because the road is for everyone. You're rich, you're poor, the road is for you. The airport, same thing there. All of these things. That's why I think when we look at the priorities, surely you can have a very one-sided way of looking at things and say, okay, I'm just going to look at this. But history teaches us that it's not the right way when you look at development. There's a very, very important word when we think development is the word holistic. You need to have a holistic approach in whatever you do when you talk about development. You can not only build the stadium alone, because the stadium get into an urbanization, plan where stadium is going to be connected with transportation, with a mall, with shops, right? With hospital, so health, maybe with education. You're going to have schools, universities doing sports management, doing marketing, event, and so on and so forth. So again, my answer to people who are just thinking that, oh, Morocco is not ready, or Morocco should just look at the very basic needs, I think the approach has to be holistic. You want to cover as much as you can with those mega projects, which they all play a role of accelerating the global development of the country. Not only one side, but the entire development of the country. And it helps put the spotlight, a great light, by the way, in your nation. By 2030, the entire world will know about Morocco. The entire world will know about Africa.
Well, the entire world knew about Morocco when we reached the semifinals.
Yeah, exactly. That's a great call, actually. That's you're talking about sports performance, and I'm glad you're mentioning that, because your vision is about the athletic performance, right? My is about development. It's about business. It's about job. It's about health. It's about all this stuff. So I would love for us to be associated not only with athletic performance, because to be honest, we already have that. As I mentioned earlier, Hicham El Guerrouj, Nawal Al Mutawakil, and so on and so forth, right? But if in the near future we can have people thinking, oh, we have this gentleman from Casablanca, he's been able to develop an amazing sports technology to change, to improve health of people, we've done the job. Or tomorrow, people around the world, they'll be saying, oh, from an educational standpoint, where are you looking at? Oh, well, look at Morocco. There's this unbelievable university called UM6P. They're amazing. Oh, why are they amazing? Well, they develop a new research tracks so that the recovery of athletes goes faster. Or the management of venue is getting better. It's more sustainable, more efficient, and so this is the type of thing I'm looking at.
Yeah, definitely. Tourism as well. Just an idea that popped in my head. Those remote areas that are separated from impoverishment. If more people know about Morocco, more people will come to Morocco, more tourism will be directed to those areas, and maybe they'll benefit as well.
Yeah,
definitely.
Absolutely.
So let's do a little bit of positive skepticism. What could go wrong while preparing for the World Cup or after the World Cup? What possibly the worst case scenario and how to avoid it?
I have the ultimately go wrong, but there's nothing we can do about it. It's a earthquake. It happens, right? It happens. So
No natural disasters in terms of policy making, in terms of dealing with infrastructure. How to avoid the catastrophe of, for example, of Gabon, of having these big stadiums and not maintaining them, just possible scenarios.
Well, first of all, Gabon is a very respectable country, and I love my people in Gabon, right? But Gabon is not at Morocco level, right? We're not talking about the same game at all. I think when we look at the Kingdom of Morocco over the past 20 years, we've seen a major rise overall. As I mentioned earlier, a shift in terms of strategy, pushing more on African champion, the South-South relationship, the conglomerate in banking, Tijari Wafa, Bank of Africa, in construction, obviously, and so on and so forth. So Morocco is not in the same level. We can't really compare both, right? That's too different, right? I think the other thing is, from a leadership perspective, there's two things I need to mention. Over the past 50 years, Morocco has been able to consistently produce elite level talent. Over the past 50 years, we look at in France, there's the mean schools, high level. I think it's 30-40% of Moroccans part of the audience. You have to look at top schools in Belgium. If I recall correctly, it's a Moroccan who find one of the way to cure COVID. He was studying he applied for a scholarship in France. France denied it. He went to Belgium, University of Louvain, if I recall correctly, and boom, he found one of the way to manage that. So again, over the past 50 years, when you look at leadership, Morocco has been able to produce consistent level of elite talent. That's number one. Number two, we are in the kingdom. And the great thing about the kingdom, we have a leader who understands the game and who truly wants to move the country forward. I think that leadership, which is stable, which has vision, and which has planning, help you to succeed. Unfortunately, we do lack leadership in other nations on the continent. So the risk around, because to your initial question, the risk around what could go wrong and why, for example, you mentioned Gabon, it's just lack of planning, change of leadership. You know what happened to the Bongo family in Gabon. Bon, here we don't have that case. You know, it's a different world. So apart from an earthquake, honestly, I'm not sure what can go wrong. Everybody that I've met is truly engaged in the true success of this World Cup, because I think they truly and genuinely understand that the impact goes beyond Moroccan borders. You know, it's truly important for them. When I'm talking to all those guys, they truly understand that if the World Cup, 2030 World Cup, is a success, you're putting not only Morocco on the map, but you're raising the African flag very, very, very high.
Yeah, it's a big standard to live up to.
It's a huge standard. And, you know, the great thing about it is, again, that everybody is truly engaged in it. People want to do it. And, you know, we even didn't talk about diplomacy, sports diplomacy. You know, how is this World Cup helping the international relationship between Morocco and other countries? Did you know that a lot of countries don't have stadium and they come and play their games here in football? They come and play their match here. But why? Why are they coming to Morocco and they're not coming to... I live in South Africa. Why they don't come to South Africa? Okay? Because of the relationship that you have with those guys, the hospitality that you have with those guys, and obviously the leadership. We all know who the president of the federation is. So I think when you think about this 2030 thing and sport in general, the power of sports diplomacy is huge to, first of all, strengthen the relationship between Morocco and the other countries. But secondly, it can be an excellent booster to do business. What kind of business? Hosting mega events. You know, I think, we hosted a couple of major events here, sporting event that is, to host concert. You know, it could be a major boost to produce merchandising from Morocco and, ship it around the world. So that's why I truly am a big advocate of sports as a major tool for diplomacy leading to business.
You mentioned one of the things that helps Morocco be stable is the fact that we're in a kingdom and we're not more... That provides a stability that makes you prepare for the long term. So yeah, we're lucky to have that. A lot of other countries cannot plan for the long term because there's so much tension in the leadership. So that works in our benefit as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the key things for any investors is two things really. Investors very basic people. An investor is a very basic person. Just like mom at home or dad at home, an investor needs stability. Your mom, she wants stability, right? She doesn't want Zakaria to go left and right and do some funky stuff, right?
He did.
Right? Oh, you did? Ah, yeah. So where did you grow up?
I grew up in a very small city called Ben Hamad.
Where is that?
It's next to Stad, if you ever heard of Stad.
Yeah, they have a good university.
Yeah, so I had a very Moroccan childhood. So everything that you think a Moroccan childhood is,
I don't know.
you see my head is full with like scars. So that shows you I had a nice childhood.
Okay.
I had an interesting one.
I'm glad you did.
Maybe a little bit of brain damage, but it's good.
But you could have gone to Stad. They have a good university there.
There's no university where I come from.
Oh, okay.
So I had to move to Mohammedia to study.
Mohammedia, good
Yeah.
destination.
Yeah, it's
Good food.
I've been living there for 10 years now.
Okay.
I'm doing my PhD there now.
Okay. And you're not even far from Ben Slimane.
Not that far. So the stadium's gonna be next to me.
You have to take your seats.
I'll rent my apartment as an Airbnb. I'm waiting for the people to come.
Okay.
Touching on the book a little bit. So
Yes.
you had the book is very rich because it has the perspective of 600 people. One of them, I think, is Didier Drogba. So the answer that everyone wants to know is, what does he smell like?
Perfume. I guess. I don't know. What does it smell like?
Well, he's the best striker to come out of Africa. So
Some people would say no.
who? Eto'o?
You have Samuel Eto'o, Sadio Mane, Mo Salah.
But
all
the
those
impact-wise, who do you think is... Okay, here's the question. Impact-wise, who do you think is the most important athlete to come out of Africa when it comes... no athletics, just impact.
There's only one to me. Like this, there's only one, and by far, like nobody can touch him. By far, it's not even close. And I know Didier. He's a good brother of mine. He's a great guy. I love what he did around the civil war back then in Côte d'Ivoire. If you recall, they qualified Côte d'Ivoire to the World Cup, and there was an amazing moment, what we call defining moments, where the camera come into the locker room and people are celebrating, and then he says, stop. You bring the camera in, he take the jersey, national team jersey, he come down on his knee and he's begging people to stop war. That was, to me, one of the most defining moments in sports. So he did some great stuff. Samuel Eto'o as well, he did some great stuff. He financed the national team. He did some amazing stuff. But to me, the one that is unique is the most impactful by every measure. It's Dikembe Mutombo. The great Dikembe Mutombo, big brother of mine. He was very good to me personally as a human being. But what he did is just unbelievable. I think his story, you come from DRC, the Democratic Republic of Congo. You get to Georgetown, one of the best university in America. You go there to study medicine because you want to cure people. You want to do good with people. And you get recruited by a coach because you're tall. You were not even supposed to play basketball. And you become one of the best of all time. And beside that, you still want to cure people, so you build a hospital in Kinshasa, So for me, Mutombo by far is the most amazing human being I've probably met in my life, and has been very, very, very blessed, very, very, very blessed to have him as a brother. That was for me is on another level.
Yeah, that's wonderful. That's absolutely amazing. So yeah, going back to the book, 600 perspectives.
Yeah.
How difficult was it managing between those perspectives to actually shape the book?
Yeah, look, it's a great question. I think we actually didn't even finish. We should produce many more books. I think what we're trying to do, and to be honest, I'm standing here, I'm kind of the face of the book, but there's so many people who have contributed. at very high level, people who are well known on the continent. You see who did the forwards. I'm thinking of Maktar Diop, who heads the IFC, Rémi Rioux of the AFD, Ngozi from the World Trade Commerce Organization, Didier Drogba you mentioned, maybe the future president of Côte d'Ivoire, Tidiane Thiam, who's a major finance guy, and so on and so forth. So honestly, a lot of people have been involved, and we really try to put together the views of those different people. It's just that I just came up with the idea, and because I knew people, I brought them together. But it was indeed challenging. And to be honest, I think it deserves number 2 and number 3, so that we have more space to share the knowledge with people. I think, that was just, it's 450 pages, so it's already big, right? 450 pages, 10 chapters, 10 case studies, 8 big interviews with unbelievable people, but it's just not enough. I think each of those parts deserve an entire book. We should have a book on sports marketing. We should have a book on media. We should have a book on investment, because we talk about investment and financing. How do we find innovative solution to finance sports in Africa? We should have a book on sports diplomacy. We should have a book on sports tourism, and so on and so forth. So again, big time blessing to be able to deliver that, but never been possible without people who have putting a maximum effort in this book. Actually, I should. Reda is there. Reda Lareshis, Reda, who's been joining us, and he's been part of the book. He's one of the contributors from Morocco, one of the top experts in sports. He played the game, football. He studied in the US, and now back in Morocco to continue to grow the industry. So he's one of the guys who's been contributing here. And without him, I would have never been able to do that book. So
thank you, Reda.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. What would you say is the most important takeaway from the book? If you could leave people with one piece of it, I wouldn't call it advice, or just information that they should carry on about the book that helped you understand the game better, and that would help people understand the game better.
It's a tough question, but maybe one is the Hugo model. You know, as Africans, we need to understand the game. That's the U. We need to grow the game. That's the G. And we need to own the game. That's the O. So the Hugo model is the one I hope people will take away and truly understand that we have an amazing, amazing opportunity in hands, an opportunity that can impact our continent from an economic perspective, creating jobs and value, from a social perspective, empowering youth to feel better, to grow the life skills, encouraging our women to be stronger, to have a bigger self-esteem, so that's social, and societal is sports can truly impact societies in ways that no other can.
Well, Mr. Mbiakop, thank you very much.
Thank you. It's been a
Thank
pleasure.
You, everyone.
Do we have Q&A or are we done?
Yeah, we have 5 more minutes for a quick Q&A if there's any question.
No? No question? Okay.
You
People have been...
pointed.
There's this question, yeah.
Thank you so much for the book, and thank you for the presentation. Just a simple question.
Yes.
Apart football, please, do you think that there is any other sport that has chances to be developed in the next years?
You mean apart from football?
Apart football, other sports that has chances to be developed in Africa for next years?
There's a number of sports, to be honest. I think it really depends on the region, on the countries that you're in. Obviously, athletics. Kenya is very big in athletics. Basketball. You have countries like Nigeria, Angola, who are very big on basketball. But those are sports that people know already, right? If we want to go a little bit different routes, there are two options I would like to share with you, right? Number one, let's look at what's happening today around the world, which is technology. Technology has allowed the growth and development of a lot of things, including esports and gaming. So I think gaming and esports are areas where we want to look at, and areas where we have a unique play to make, because we have unbelievable stories to tell. Just like Japanese with, Japanese, when you play the game, you're actually experiencing their history. I don't know if you know that. When you go and you have to go grab something, a tool or whatever, it's because you're celebrating a specific area of their story, their history. I think with us, it's the same thing. I was mentioning earlier, if you look at the history of the Amazigh people, it's unbelievable. There's so much to take in there. So gaming and esports. So gaming is amateur playing. Esports is a professional. So that's, for me, it's one big area of opportunities. The second thing that I would say is traditional sports. Authentic African sports that people have forgotten. At the Olympics, I think it's 90% of sports at the Olympics are actually sports coming from 3 or 5 nations. US, Canada, UK, and France. So when we look at the Olympics, when we say, oh, it's super inclusive, it is inclusive because of participation, but most of the sports are not even sports from outside of those countries. We, from an African perspective, we have a lot of traditional sports that we've forgotten, and we can look at it. Awale is one of them. Here in Morocco, what is the sports? It started with the F.
I was going to say Mjedba.
What is Mjedba?
It's like a type of wrestling.
Yeah. Okay, it's a different name in Ghana and Senegal, but same. Yeah, that's one. But there's another one. Huh? No, sorry.
Nug.
Say? Fantasia.
What is? Oh yeah.
Yes. Fantasia is a big time sport. It's huge in the history and what it means to the Kingdom of Morocco. Fantasia is big time. This is maybe an area where you want to put focus on, and maybe it's an area where you want to integrate within the Western sports. Maybe we can bring a little bit of Fantasia into the football games. That would be, and I hope they do that at the World Cup, because they understand that, oh wow, we never thought of that. So that's one thing that we say in the book. We think that we should definitely promote the cultural heritage when we organize those big time events. Right.
Yeah, I think they're kicking us out. Thank you, everyone.
Okay.
Thank you,
Sorry.
Mr. Mbiakop.
No, pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.